Perfect.
YouTube is playing right now. So I think it
Says here on it's on Zoom. Mhm.
muted. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. Every meeting is a different journey. Glad to have you with us today. Welcome to the March 21st, 2024 Education Research Center's Advisory Board meeting. We'll get started with our first item, which is call to order and remarks by Advisory Board Chair. I'll also do quick roll call for our board members. If you could just let me know you're here as I say your name. Yuji, here. Angie,
Here.
Celeste,
Here.
Holly,
Here.
here. Rayon,
Here.
Jackie,
Here.
Linda,
Here.
Kathy. You already made your presence known earlier, so I know you're here. And Megan. Megan is absent today. Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're
That's what I'm
working on it. Thank you. Okay. So next item, public testimony. We do not have any. So we'll move on to the next item. Consideration and possible action to approve additional data and amendment requests. 1 second, please. Could you mute real quick?
Sorry.
Mute. Okay, we're back in business. Okay, item 3. Consideration of possible action to approve additional data and amendment requests. And as we go through this section, I'll remind the board members to, if you could say your name when you motion or second, so we can get that all documented clearly. Great. Data 1, UH20, career and technical education. Any questions or comments from the board on this data request? Great. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve, Celeste.
Do I have a second?
I second, Jackie.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, data 2, UH54, pre-kindergarten in Texas and the greater Houston area. Any questions or comments from the board on this subject or this request? Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Angie, motion to approve.
I second, Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Oh, did I skip one?
No, sorry, I skipped
No,
it.
okay. Data 3, UH142, exploring student and institutional responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. Questions or comments? Oh, sorry, this one is UTD 142. Clarifying that for the record. Questions or comments? Have a motion to approve.
This is Jackie. I motion to approve.
I second, Celeste.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 4, UTD 150. Any questions or comments from the board on this one? We need to bring up the years.
For this one, is there a specific years that are being requested for the additional data sets?
Trey, do you want to take this?
Sure. This is a project for Commit Partnership in Dallas, and we were a little bit we failed to include everybody that had business at the advisory board meeting when we sent out a Teams link or Zoom link, so they were unable to join. But anyway, they're basically just asking for an update of all of they want the most recent data of all the data they already have access to,
Okay.
so they can have update their results.
Yeah, and yeah, just some context. There's been a lot of turnover at commit, and so the folks who were originally part of the proposal are no longer there, and so they've been trying to, bring the project up to speed, and that's why they're making this request.
That wasn't it, right? We were just being. Are we good?
Yeah, I'm okay. Everyone else. Okay. Any other? Thank y'all. Questions or comments otherwise from the board? I have a motion to approve.
I move to approve Celeste.
A second.
I second Jackie.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Great. Data 5, UTD 154. Questions or comments from the board on this? Have a motion to approve. I'll move to approve. Melissa, have a second.
Celeste, second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Back on camera and I'm voting. Sorry.
Yay! You made it.
I made it. So sorry.
Glad you're safe in the weather.
Whew. Sorry.
All right, motion passes. Data 6, UTD 163. Questions or comments on this one from the board? Do we have a note about the coordinating board data? Yeah.
Oh, I'm also looking.
Oh, you are, okay. All right, we're just making sure all the data we think is requested.
For data 6, is OCS needed to be added, or are the researchers fine with just using WS?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
What's the latest dates? Or what is the latest year being requested? I'm sorry.
Last time I requested, I was just given up till present and everything.
Okay.
Updated every time, if that's still okay.
Yeah, I think we'll just want to add then a request for the OCS as well.
Okay.
That. And do you think the OC1, Eugene?
Yes.
Okay. So I would say let's amend it to add the OCS and the OC1 in the request.
Thank you.
Just cover our bases and make sure you have the data.
So to be clear, is there anything we have to do? Or are you amending the request on your end?
I think let's update the official form
Okay.
and add those two on it, but we can do the approval. If there's nothing else, we can do the approval with the amendment of adding those two. Like
Okay.
So is it just adding the OCS? Because they have OC1 on there.
Oh, it's already on there. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
All
just
right.
looking at my notes. I need more screens and meeting rooms. So I'm not looking at all that. Yeah, okay, so we'll add OCS. So anything else before we make a motion? Then do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the OCS?
I'll move to approve with the added OCS.
Second?
Celeste.
Sorry, who wants it?
Kathy, I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Data 7 UTD 181. Questions or comments from the board? Motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
I'll second Celeste.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Data 8 UTD 184. Questions or comments from the board? Not. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Rayan. I move to approve.
This is Jackie. I second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. UTD 188. Questions or comments from the board? Motion to approve?
Angie, I'll move to approve.
I second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Great. Data 10, UTD 190. Questions or comments?
This is Rayan. I move to approve.
Excellent.
This is Holly. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Great. Data 11, PA 139. Questions or comments from the board? Not, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
This is Jackie. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 12, UTA 176. Questions or comments from the board? Have a motion to approve?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
This is Rayan. I second.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 13, UTA 210. Questions or comments from the board?
This is Rayan. I move to approve.
Second.
Angie, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 14, UTA 217. Questions or comments? Not motion to approve.
This is Rayan. I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
This is Jackie. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Data 15, UTA 221. Questions or comments? None, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Holly. I motion to approve.
A second.
With Kathy, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Great. Moving on to consideration and possible action to approve additional data requests and extension requests. So data 16 and extension 1, UH 48. Questions or comments from the board on this one? Not motion to approve?
This is Rayon. I move to approve.
I second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Extension 2, sorry. Looking at the screen. Just a second. Okay. Extension 2, UH 24. Questions or comments from the board? Not to have a motion to approve? Melissa, I'll move to approve. Second.
This is Jackie.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 3, UTD 109. Questions or comments from the board? Not a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
I second Celeste.
All in favor?
Mhm.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're making it young. Extension 4, UTD 145. Questions or comments? Motion to approve? Melissa, I'll move to approve. Wait a second.
Angie, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed. Extension 5, UTD 162. Questions or comments?
I motion to approve.
Second?
This is Jackie. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed. Extension 6, UTD 159. Questions or comments from the board?
I motion to approve.
I second. This is Rayon.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 7, UTA 116. Questions or comments? Motion to approve.
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
I second. This is Rayon.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 8, UTA 147. Questions or comments? If not, motion to approve. Melissa,
is
motion to approve.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Jackie, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 9, UTA 131. Questions or comments? Motion to approve.
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
Second.
I'll second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 10, UTA 152. Questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, this one looks like the extension date may be 3 years out. I have it that the end date was March of 2024, and they wanted extended to March of 27. Unless there's a different current end date.
Correct. Celeste.
I believe Boke Young is on the call. At least I
Yes.
thought I saw.
Yes, I'm requesting a 3-year extension.
Okay. Let's say 2 years somewhere on there. Okay. Okay, so end date is 3 years, so. Any other questions or comments? All right, motion to approve.
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
Second,
A second, Holly.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Sometimes I forget where we are. Okay, extension 11, UTA 188. Question or comments from the board? Motion to approve.
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
Second,
I second Celeste.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 12, UTA 120. Questions or comments from the board?
I have a note that, does this have a data request as well? Or is it,
We had a
Just-
note that that might be the case too.
okay,
Yeah, maybe we should talk through that. Is additional data being also requested in this one?
I believe Leaf is on. Is that true, Leaf? Maybe not. Well, I guess I can just talk to it.
Yeah.
What, in there, you're saying that they requested data too?
Yeah, do you have? Under number 3 on the form. So it's-
Oh, I see. So the star testing, gosh. I guess what I would say is maybe I should look at the original proposal and see if they're just adding different years
Okay.
and then get back to you on this. How about
Well, I
that?
think we did check it. I mean, we have a note that it wasn't in the original proposal.
Not the star one, but the
Which
post-secondary
one?
enrollment data.
Oh, the
I think on the
post-secondary
note.
enrollment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the post-secondary.
So I think we could, I don't know, amend it. Amend this to be an extension and a data request.
Okay,
If the board is okay with the request of this additional post-secondary data.
I think it's fine. As long as it's within the scope of the proposal,
Then do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to make this a extension and additional data request?
This is Kathy. I move to approve with the amended classification.
That sounded like a dog.
It is a dog, which is why I'm voting with my hands, because there's a whole little scrum in behind. So sorry.
No, I loved it. It makes the meeting a little more friendly, I feel like.
I second Kathy without a dog in the back.
We get to see the dog too.
I know, maybe the dog could be a new member. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 13, UTA 150. Questions or comments? Not motion to approve.
This is Rayan. I move to approve.
We have a second.
This is Jackie. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Extension 14, UTA 133. Questions or comments?
Yeah, this is another that just goes a little bit over the 2-year limit. I think the end date was December 23 and it goes out to March 25.
Yeah, I think if the board is okay with that.
I think it's fine. I motion to approve.
Yeah, Angie, I'll move to second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 15, UTA 153.
My only note for this one is kind of the opposite of the others. They're only asking for a 3-month extension, and it looked like a lot of analysis still to be done. So I wonder if it may be better to ask for longer time and then not need it than to have to come back and ask again.
Yeah, and I believe Rebecca's on. Yeah, Rebecca Lyle.
Yes, I'm on. I think I would need to have my colleague Tara O'Neill address that because it's a budgetary issue.
Got it.
So, Tara, do you want to address that?
Sure, this is Tara O'Neill. Sure. I mean, I guess, so Rebecca's doing the bulk of the work on this one. So, if 6 months, maybe we'll, instead of 3, we'll ask for 6. If that sounds good to everybody. Rebecca, you included?
Yeah, I'm just trying to save you a little time of having to come back and do this again if you can avoid that.
I think that sounds good. Rebecca's made great progress and she really kind of picked it up after we had some turnover, but that's probably wise.
Yeah, I agree.
Great.
And then this is Angie. I'll move to approve
With
with
the
the,
amendment.
with the change up to a 6-month extension.
Rayan, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. We made it to new proposals. A quick note for researchers on the board. Per advice from coordinating board legal, we need a request that FERPA exemption explanation is added to the language of the proposals. And we realize this is a request after people have submitted proposals. So I think in most of these cases, if the board is okay, we can request that if it's approval except for this, we can request that it's approved with just an amendment of adding a statement about the FERPA exemption. Happy to talk through this with the researchers as we go through, but just high level for researchers on the call, the FERPA exemption is what grants researchers access to the student level data, even though it's de-identified. And most of our proposals fall under either the audit evaluation exception where researchers are doing an evaluation of a specific program or policy. The others is the studies exemption, which includes research that aims to help improve instruction. And so those are usually the major buckets that the FERPA exemptions fall under for ERC research. So just wanted to put that out there and know that we realize this is a new request. So happy to work with you as we update the proposals to add this.
So Melissa, just to be clear, for all new proposals for the future meetings, researchers need to include a statement about how their proposal meets that exemption.
Yes.
Yes.
State the exemption and then how it meets that. And I think
Okay.
most of the time with our research, it's pretty clear. So I'm hoping this is not too big of a lift for researchers to just add the statement. And apologies for getting this out at this stage, but and we'll work with you all to provide, maybe send an email with just the exact info that you can pass on to the researchers at the beginning stage, so we don't have to put people through this.
Okay, thank you.
And so can we kind of come up with the language template or something for each
Absolutely.
one of them?
I think
And I know they'd have to be maybe something specific about the proposal, but basically we could look through for one sentence that says this, you know.
Yeah, like kind of a prompt, and then it can be filled in specifics about that specific project. I think that makes a lot of sense to help get the researcher started to get to that full sentence of this meets this FERPA exception, because and we can follow up with everyone right after this as researchers are adding that statement for the amendment, just to help close the loop on this for the current proposal.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience as we tighten up our procedures over here. Okay, well, let's get started. We have a lot of really cool proposals this meeting. We'll start with proposal 1, including remote access requests, UH79, the impact of Parent Plus loans on student academic attainment and employment outcomes. Is there a researcher here to talk to us about this?
Yes, hi, I'm Katie Blanchard. I'm a PhD candidate at George Washington University. So with this project, so there's been a lot of research on the impacts of student loan expansions and raising the limit on undergraduate borrowing for students, and how that can improve student outcomes. Sometimes they graduate faster, more likely to graduate. There is not a causal paper that links the Parent Plus loans to student performance, student degree attainment, and their employment outcomes. So I would like to use the Texas ERC data to look at the impacts of, there were 3 kind of changes to access in Parent Plus loans in the 2010s, 2 officially in 2011 and in 2014, where the credit standards changed and Parent Plus loans became harder to get. The restrictions were tightened, and then 3 years later they were loosened again. So this would be changing access to the Parent Plus loans. And so I want to use these changes to see when parents have access to loans to supplement their child's student loans, are the students impacted? I want to look at enrollment outcomes. Are students more likely to enroll when their parents can kind of supplement their own student loans? I want to look at work behavior when maybe parents lose Parent Plus loans. Do students have to work more in order to make up some of that difference? And ultimately, are they more likely to complete a degree, and does it impact their earnings after graduation at all? I think it's an important policy, especially in Texas that has the top 10% rule. I think it would be interesting. I'm requesting data to see if there's maybe any interaction of students who are in that top 10%, but maybe aren't able to afford college, if Parent Plus loans helped kind of bridge that gap at all.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers?
Yeah, I read this proposal and I had a couple of questions, or just things that I noticed.
Yeah.
So it did seem like you were missing the CBM OC1 and the CBM OCS if you wanted to look at kind of outcomes in the present. So you might consider including those in your data table.
Okay.
And then it was, it seems in your proposal, you said you want to complete the analysis in spring 2024. So
Yeah,
that was a little bit confusing to me because it's March.
yeah,
And if you're
yeah.
gonna
I
do
had
anything.
Yeah, I had sent this to in October to try to make it for the December meeting, but there were too many proposals already, so it just got pushed to this meeting. So my timeline has moved back, but I didn't resubmit with that new timeline.
Yeah, I don't know what others think, but it would be good to have an accurate timeline
Yeah,
in
yeah, I
the
can edit that.
proposal. And I wrote down there's a discrepancy in the number of years requested in the reader's guide and the proposal narrative.
Yeah, I can update that as well. I noticed that too after I submitted.
Okay. And I also read that you were measuring student work behavior. I don't, how are you measuring that?
So, well, I can look at works, whether they are using like work study programs, but also I'm requesting the Texas workforce data as well to see maybe are they working part-time to make up for a loss of loans. Yeah.
Okay, so work is employment.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
I had a couple other data comments. One is it's on page 9. You just want to correct C because you have P enroll demog twice instead of P demog grad.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Demog grad.
The only other comment was whether I know you have P enroll, but I didn't know if you wanted to consider P attend demog. Sometimes there's a few differences in what variables are in both of those.
Okay. Yeah, I can take a look at what is in attend and see if I should add that.
Okay, well, we probably want to decide today. And the two that Holly mentioned, this OC1 and OCS, are just the two newest ones connected to coordinating board data.
Okay.
So we could include those two plus demog, and then you just want to change the grad, the P demog
To
grad
grad.
on the C.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'll move to approve with the addition of the OC1, OCS, P attend demog, and changing to P demog grad.
Also adjusting the timeline in the proposal.
In the timeline.
And adding FERPA exemption statement.
Yes. Yeah, I can make those edits and send back.
We have all that documented on our end. Okay, thank you. Do you have a second?
I second, Holly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Proposal 2, including remote access requests UH 80. Anyone here to talk to us about this project?
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Jung Kim, a PhD student at UH. So let me briefly explain my research. So in essence, my project aims to explore the influence of neighborhoods on student outcomes with a particular emphasis on their choices of STEM majors and careers. So underrepresentation of certain racial and gender groups in STEM fields is a significant concern in addition to STEM workforce shortages. While existing research often attributes this underrepresentation to individual or family characteristics, there's another aspect, the impact of neighborhoods. So in this study, I intend to go beyond the traditional focus and investigate how external factors shape student decisions regarding STEM paths. So specifically, I'll be examining how STEM choices are affected by factors like the length of time spent in certain neighborhoods and variations in business patterns across neighborhoods. So this research adds a fresh perspective to our understanding of STEM choices and gender and racial disparities by considering the crucial role of neighborhood. So it also explores the potential benefits of research hubs and agglomeration economies, showing how their presence can positively impact the next generation. So this aspect is particularly significant for Texas, emerging as a tech hub with its rich racial diversity.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researcher?
So when you're looking at neighborhood factors, are you referring to neighborhoods where the students live or the neighborhood where they go to school?
So yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So from the data set, I don't know their student address. So I use the school's address as kind of the proxy for student address.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Only other comment is another one of those OC1s, because he has 001
Yeah.
listed. And then the other question is, are you going to be linking students to teachers?
Yes, like for those later years, yeah, I also want to see those like the teacher's effect.
Okay, then you probably want to add the class roster. You have course complete, but you don't have class roster.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I do like to add the class roster too.
Yeah.
There are no other comments. Do I have a motion to approve? Yes, I'll add that to the, a motion to approve UH 80 with the amendment to add class roster, add OC1, and add FERP exemption language.
To approve, Celeste.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Proposal 3, including remote access request UH 81. Anybody here to talk to us about this project?
Hi, everyone. My name is Feza Meraz, and I am the PI for this project. We're trying to find refugee and asylum students who have been resettled starting 2010 in Texas public schools and kind of tracking their long-term education and economic workforce outcomes and kind of seeing how different school level characteristics affect students' outcomes and workforce outcomes. And we are requesting access for 2 years starting now, like March 2024.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researcher?
So Melissa, does this proposal need some statement around FERPA?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, considering, was that mentioned for the previous proposal?
Yes, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I must have missed that.
No, thank
Okay.
you for paying attention.
I just want to make sure that we're treating everyone the same.
I think
Yeah, it was.
I at least said by Eugene. In the last, I think it was quietly said by Yuji in the last one.
Oh,
Okay. It was in there. Yeah. Does this one need OC1?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think I wrote down OC1 and P class roster and maybe P graduate demog.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Not, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add request for P class roster, P demog, OC1, and add a statement about FERPA exception?
I move to approve. This is Jackie.
I second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for being here. Great. Proposal 4, including remote access requests UH 82. The researcher here to talk to us.
Hi, everybody. Tony Templeton from the UHERC. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for reading our proposal. We are we're hoping to examine the natural experiment that's unfolding before us in the Houston area right now to understand how state takeover will impact the Houston area education system in a multitude of ways across student outcomes, staffing outcomes, and school level outcomes that span both short-term and long-term aspects of all of those three major categories.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? I think we'll have to add OC1.
And FERPA, channeling my inner Holly.
Yep. Any other questions, comments?
I move to approve with the two changes, the OC1 and the FERPA addition.
Great.
This is Angie. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Be interested to see the result of this.
Thank you all.
Proposal 5, including remote access UH 83. Anyone here to talk to us about this one?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is, I'm a econ PhD student at Michigan State. The research I'm proposing would look at the impact of federal aid programs targeted at teachers on teacher retention, quality, and employment choices, though I would mainly be focusing on retention and outside employment choices. Unlike other research, I'm interested in the impact on retention and all these other outcomes after teachers meet these program requirements, at which point they no longer have that financial incentive to stay put. I think this research would offer several benefits to Texas. Texas, like most other states, has faced teacher shortages and high attrition rates for years, and even created the Teach for Texas Loan Repayment Assistance Program to help combat this issue. I think that knowing how teachers react to exhausting program limits is not only really important in better understanding the teacher labor market, but can also help guide policies aiming to address teacher shortages. And then from the data perspective, the ERC data would just allow me to connect teachers to both their financial aid records and employment records, which I don't think I've been able to find anywhere else that I could do that.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
So could you still do your research without the teacher loan forgiveness program information? I don't think that's included in FAD.
So are you asking like without being able to see which teachers actually apply and receive forgiveness?
Right.
So yeah, but what I'd be estimating is mainly just like the intent to treat or like the overall effect of the program without being able to identify who applies for it.
Got it. Okay. And then one other note I had was you might want to request OOS. I know you requested 004. OOS also gives the course level data. So if you want to look at which courses the teachers took, that might be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
I would suggest to adding, so the OOS and the OCS, I think is key because that'll tell you exactly what course that teacher took, not just general, what courses were offered. The other thing I would suggest is adding the 001 and OC1, which is just general enrollment indicator in higher ed. So you will have, you're asking for FADs and for other indicators, but that'll help like maybe you found a teacher who's enrolled but not in the financial aid record, something like that. So I would suggest adding that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If there are none, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the request for the 001 OC1 and the OOS OCS and the addition of a FERPA integration statement?
I move to approve, Celeste.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here today. All right, proposal 6, including remote access request UTD 199. Anyone here to talk to us about this one?
Yeah, hi, Bryce. This is Jack Melchoy. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. All right, so I'm Jack from the University of Chicago. I'm an assistant professor here, and this project is joint with Josh Angris and Parag Pathak, who are both at MIT. The overall goal is to estimate causal impacts of Texas charter schools on long-run student outcomes. We've got quite a bit of a research base now looking at short-run test score impacts of attending a charter school in Texas and elsewhere. We've got a couple of papers maybe on what you might call medium-run outcomes like high school graduation and initial college going, but we know really very little about longer-run socioeconomic trajectories of students who randomly get admitted to charter schools and students who randomly don't. So our goal in the paper is to try to produce some new knowledge on this front by combining the random variation in charter school attendance driven by admission lotteries, which we have now collected, with the administrative data on student outcomes both in the ERC and some external outcomes from other data sets as well on crime, teenage childbearing, household formation, voting, and geographic migration. And we submitted a previous proposal on this project a couple of years ago, and we were approved by the board. Thank you. And this one is really just being submitted because we wanted to add a couple of additional outcomes to our analysis, and there was not a straightforward path towards just adding a couple of research questions. So we have submitted the new proposal, but about 95% of the text is the same as the previously approved proposal.
Great, thanks for that background. Any questions or comments from the board for the researcher?
So just administratively then, UTD 134 was not, you never conducted that research?
We never actually started the clock, yeah, because when we
Okay.
submitted the original proposal, we had not yet collected the lottery records. And so we've been waiting to start the clock until we finish that process. And we are basically now wrapping up that process. We have one additional data set to get coming in the next month or so. So the timing is actually good to just have a new proposal. And we never started the clock on the previously proposed and approved one.
Gotcha. Can you help me understand the literature that talks about why charter school attendance would impact voting or the types of behavior that you're looking at?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been maybe one or two papers so far that have looked at specifically charter effects on voting. And I think the goal there is, maybe voting is an imperfect but somewhat useful proxy for civic participation. So does going to a non-traditional but still public school affect civic participation? And we can look at a couple different outcomes. We can look at whether you register to vote at all, which is one measure of participation in the civic system, when you register to vote, say at what age, and then which elections you vote in, sort of how often you participate in elections. We don't, of course, see how people vote, but we can see those three outcomes. So I think that's the overall goal there, is to see, what the effect of attending a non-traditional public school would be on civic participation outcomes.
So what about attending a Texas charter school would impact that?
Yeah, I think we would probably expect to see, fairly similar effects across other states as well. I think the goal is to see if attending a school that is still publicly funded, but run a little bit differently from traditional public schools, to see if that has any effect, maybe it doesn't, on later civic participation. So yeah, I don't think we would expect to see differential effects across Texas and elsewhere, but given that there's been, a handful of papers in other states, it might be interesting to compare.
So what would you do with that information?
I think, the whole goal of this project is to really think more broadly about how charter schools affect the life trajectories of students who end up enrolling them, well beyond test score impacts. And so I think we're trying to just basically estimate impacts on as many interesting socioeconomic outcomes as we can. So not just labor market impacts, not just education impacts, but also household formation, geography, and civic participation. So I think we're trying to paint as comprehensive of a picture as we can. And so we think that, these all fall under this interesting umbrella of, what do charter schools do beyond changing test scores, perhaps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Linda brings up a good point. Something I thought about too as I read this is kind of understanding more about the mechanisms of these things. Because yes, totally agree. It's an interesting relationship to investigate, but just want to make sure for the purpose of the ERC, how, what about what you're looking at could help inform how charter schools run, if we're, think of whatever policy you could think of, how they run, or whether we're pushing for them or not, things like that. What about the specific mechanisms, I would say, between like the charter school experience and these long-term outcomes would help inform Texas conversations about charter schools?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think our goal is really to provide Texas households and policymakers really with as comprehensive of a set of impacts of charter schools as we can, right? Because we all know that test scores are very easy to measure, but they are not, the end all be all of what we care about in terms of what schools do to students' lifetime trajectories. So part of it is really to just give policymakers as many outcomes, as we can see of what these schools are doing, which I think should be the goal for, frankly, most educational interventions. We don't just care whether educational interventions are boosting test scores or other short-run academic outcomes. We care about how they're affecting students' lives more broadly. And then I think we also, we mentioned this in the proposal a little bit, but we do want to do the work of seeing, schools that might be boosting short-run outcomes like test scores. Are they also the types of schools that tend to be boosting these other longer-term socioeconomic outcomes? Is there a connection between the short-term outcomes that are easy to measure and the longer-term outcomes that we have to do a lot of work to try to estimate causal impacts on? So that will be another goal of the project, is to explicitly link the short-term, easily observable outcomes to the long-term outcomes, see if that link is there and to what extent it exists.
I'll say, I think part of this will be important to think about when you add the FERPA exemption language, especially because, thinking through the exact way that your research would either help inform a policy or help improve instruction. Like, we would need to have those clear connections to how this work is possibly doing that. So that's just some food for thought as you're thinking about how to write up that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That connection. Yeah.
One other comment that we've had discussions over the voter records and consumer records from L2 before on how specific you can get, for instance, census tract of residents. I don't believe has been approved before. And I guess along with that supplemental data, I'm wondering how specific, like including childbirth records and household composition, how that helps you look at some of this long run impact.
Yeah, so actually, for another project that I'm on through the UT Austin ERC with Jeff Denning and other co-authors, the non-pecuniary effects of colleges, we're actually looking at many of these same outcomes using the same data sets. So at the last at the December ERC board meeting, we were approved to use the exact same L2 outcomes as I'm proposing in this project today. So we used the same language there, and that included the voter history, the household composition and marital status, the household IDs that could be scrambled, and the census tract of residents. So that what we have on page 7 of this proposal, item 5, that discusses the voter and consumer records from L2. That paragraph was also approved for the non-pecuniary outcomes of effects of college on non-pecuniary outcomes project that was approved in the December meeting.
Well, and I want to make a clarification that what's approved in the board necessarily isn't what might ultimately be approved by the agency's legal. So I think that's something the board thinks about too, is like things we know haven't been approved by legal in the past. We might go ahead and give a heads up here and say, hey, this doesn't usually go through, but in the end, and you probably know this from other back and forth about supplemental data with your other projects, it goes through still lots of back and forth with the legal teams at the state agencies. So there's still always more refinement that goes into deciding the ultimate data set that is provided.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely note that we will not be merging in anything like exact household addresses or census blocks, things that would be very detailed geographic categories. Census tracts have about 4,000 people in them, a minimum of 1,200. And so if you look at maps, it basically like when we in the TEA data, when we know which elementary school a student attends, that gives you, for most students at least, a pretty fine-grained area of where they might possibly live. And so census tracts would give you, pretty similar, if anything, rougher information.
Any other questions or comments on the board?
On page 8, I think you mentioned that you want the start date of ERC data access to be paused until you acquire all the supplemental data. But I want to bring it up to the board because I don't think we ever allowed that. We've been only allowing extensions. So I want to bring this up to the board, and then if we could keep the same practice as is, then that means, until you access all the supplemental data set, you will have to come back to the board for the extensions.
So, sorry, there have been several proposals that we have put before the board that includes a stipulation stating that access will not be granted until funding, for example, comes in or supplemental data has come in. So, and this has been while, Rodney was the ERC director as well as when I took over. So this is not something that's new.
Yeah, and I
we're
will say,
we're not waiting for all of the external data to come in. We actually wrote sufficient external data. So we would like some flexibility to say, even if some of the external data are in, but not all of them, we still might want to start the clock. So just some flexibility there. I think the only thing we want to avoid is starting it now if we're not exactly ready, but I think we will be ready, within a couple of months at the latest. So I don't think that timeline is too binding.
well, this has been an issue with so many proposals wanting supplemental data that there's a big backlog. And so we have had to put on hold. We can do the payment on hold. We can't do the, end date issue. And that's basically what we've done sometimes is say, okay, once you get that supplemental data that you have to have, you won't have to pay for this amount of time But once you get it, then it starts again. But again, I always tell them, but I can't change that original end date myself, you know? Does that make sense?
So just so I have that clear. So if we approve Jack's proposal today, once that approval letter that we receive essentially starts data access, is that correct? Is that
Yes.
the policy in place?
Yes, data, but it's the supplemental that has had such a long time frame to actually receive it.
I think it might have varied depending on projects. And we can maybe continue this conversation offline, but I think what we eventually want to avoid is approving something and then nothing can be done for multiple years. But what I'm hearing right today is that, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, you do have some data almost ready to be able to start some analysis. And I appreciate the statement you put in here that said, like, not all of the supplemental data needs to be there in order to do some analysis.
Right.
Because I think that helps us with this. So
yeah, and I think at this point, really the bottleneck would be just waiting for the folks, you know, at the TEA and the THCCB who actually do the merge. I know they have a backlog right now that things might take a couple of months. So I think we, as far as on our researcher side, we are basically ready to start the clock. But
okay,
if the clock starts today and the TEA is not able to merge it for several months, then that I guess would be the one thing we want to avoid.
I don't want to belabor this, and happy to have it offline, but I want to go back and reinforce what I heard Celeste saying about and to your question, Holly, you know, I think when this is approved, it is my understanding that that's when clock starts. And so it is that end date that's inflexible on our side as ERCs. Sorry, the dogs are screaming in. And I do think it would be really helpful to have clarity in that, because my understanding is, Celeste, that we have a non-negotiable hard stop for our projects that requires either a conclusion or a request for extension.
Yes. I agree.
Is there anything that needs to be updated? I keep unmuting.
This is the first time.
Okay. Is there anything that we're suggesting needs to be changed about the language in this proposal for this, or no?
Aside from the FERPA justification.
Right, but for the timeline issue, more is what I'm thinking of, just trying to keep straight. Or Holly, are you okay with it as it is? And I do think this is worth a side convo, and like, let's just write up what everyone.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? Just to make sure, the piece I have on the list for amendment is adding FERPA exemption language, which would include some specifics about how this work will help inform policy instruction. Is there anything else I'm missing from the combo? I appreciate that back and forth with the researchers. Is really helpful to get full sense of the intent of the research.
Can I ask a process question, Melissa? I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
One of the comments you made, and it ties to what you were just talking about, is the what I heard you say is what's going to be really important in the FERPA exemption explanation to ensure that it fits the boundaries of data use. In the process question is this: are we able to move to approve pending, you know, but is in the same way that legal was reviews, to your point of earlier, right? Is this also something that would be a postscript outside of our control for legal to say ultimately for any project. This FERPA exception explanation doesn't rise to the level of acceptable, or it does. I mean, I'm sure all of them would, but I guess I'm just asking to this point and drawing back to Linda's, what I heard in some of Linda's wondering is the explanation of the why associated specifically with the exception clauses seems relevant to the discussion. And so how is that accounted for?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the board feels comfortable with. So in the case where we would like to actually review the language after it's written, then we could do, it would have to be tabled for the next board meeting and we would vote on it then. The other options are, it's allowing the chair to approve after the fact. So that's, in that case, it's usually I'll send out the information to everyone and it's not really a vote, but I'm happy to take feedback on it and then it can be approved. Or the other version, if the board is not necessarily, doesn't feel like they need to necessarily review it again, it's just this approved with the amendment of adding it. I think in general, it's true that the legal at the agencies could come back and say this needs some finessing, but I think that piece is maybe more outside the board. So I think it's about what the board feels most comfortable with in each situation. So if we feel like we want to review the language, we can absolutely do that. Any other thoughts from folks?
I'm just wondering, for this round, can we, like, the ERC directors work with researchers to craft a FERPA statement, and then
I think that's what we've been assuming for the other ones.
right,
Like,
and then we use language provided by the coordinating board for the proposals for the May and June meetings. Okay.
I think that's what we've done so far, but if I'm hearing like in certain cases, the board would like to see it beforehand, that's fine, but otherwise we can do the same thing we've been doing.
And I will say in this specific case, I don't feel compelled to do that. This just prompts a process question.
Absolutely. And this is not a process that we'll hopefully do again. I sprung this on you right before the meeting. So, however the board feels comfortable with it, we can add it to the amendment where the FERPA exemption language will be added to the final proposal, if that's okay with the board. Okay. Then do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the FERPA exemption language?
A motion to approve, Holly.
I'll second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Proposal 7, including remote access request UTD 200. Anyone here to talk about this one?
Yes, hello. My name is Ben Fagenberg. I'm on the faculty at University of Illinois, Chicago, in this project we're proposing together with Stephen Rivkin, my colleague, and Eric Hennick. And so what we're hoping to do here is use Texas administrative data to isolate the contributions of schools to outcomes in adulthood, in particular outcomes related to post-secondary enrollment, labor market participation, and engagement in the criminal justice system. And the approach we want to use to do that is going to rely on students and teachers who move between schools. And we're going to use those student and teacher moves to try to measure schools' contributions to a set of cognitive and non-cognitive outcomes. So looking at test scores, absent days, and student disciplinary infractions. And then we want to link the effects of schools on those outcomes to these longer run measures that we're ultimately interested in. Um, we're hopeful that, our findings will provide evidence on variation in school quality as measured using these outcomes, including changes over time within schools, that can provide useful information on how to improve the quality of instruction across elementary and secondary schools throughout all of Texas. We're hoping that identifying schools that are most effective, in particular at promoting more positive long-term outcomes, will help us sort of hone in on the particular policies and practices that might contribute to those schools' educational successes. And also by looking at sort of the relationship between contributions to the short and long run outcomes, we'll hopefully be able to learn something about how instructional practices that shape these short run outcomes in different ways may also differentially contribute to long run outcomes like involvement in the criminal justice system. And I was just going to note before concluding, this work's building on an earlier ERC project involving Stephen Rifkin and Eric Hanishek. From that project, they published an article that uses data from Texas and multiple other states to look at patterns of economic mobility. That came out in the Journal of Public Economics, which is the top journal in that field. This present project has been awarded a National Science Foundation grant, and we're hoping that this work will just let us more comprehensively analyze social and economic mobility, in addition to that academic mobility, and also to better understand how schools and teachers contribute to these long-run outcomes that we're interested in.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
On your proposal, you mentioned that you're wanting to merge the DPS data that was used for UTD 120. Is that still the plan?
Yes, we would still like to do that if at all possible.
I remember per DPS guidance, we had to destroy the data after the study was completed. So my understanding is that UTD, they don't have DPS data, and we don't have it either. So I wonder, can you still do the study without the criminal history data?
Can I weigh in on this one?
Sure.
This is Steve Rifkin. Our arrangement with DPS wasn't for a specific project, because we have it was a proposal to use their data in a number of ways. It wasn't related specifically to the project. So the DPS data my understanding is they don't need to be destroyed as long as we're continuing to use them in the way that we specified when we put in the request to use them, which was only a couple of years ago.
Well, I think it's our agreement that the agency's agreement with DPS was that we must destroy it after use. So
The license was expired.
the license of it for it expired. So it sounds like we'll have to reopen this to get that data again and get a new agreement between the agencies and
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know the details of the agency arrangements. I just know that when we made the arrangement with DPS, that was I think that was in the middle, of projects that we had ongoing, and we've, used the DPS data.
Sure.
Is also in the principals project that we have. I think it's 116, and so, our arrangement with them was to do research, in these multiple areas using that data. So I guess,
that makes total sense. I
yeah,
think
I
we'll just have
understand.
to process it new for the agencies, because if we're linking it, DPS requires an agreement with us. So
I think that one of the things that would be feasible would be to, and I don't know if this is within agency policy, so I apologize for not knowing, would be to simply use the data that we have for 120. We didn't want to, we received guidance not to ask for an extension for project 120, even though, the work here is specified in 120. We would have had to do some extensive description of the different methods we're using to answer the same questions, but otherwise we could have asked for an extension. So I guess there was I guess we have to proceed the way the way the rules stipulate.
Yes, sounds good. I think.
And I did notice that, because I actually have the old 120, it actually didn't have the CCH listed in it. And I'm thinking this gets back to what we were talking about earlier on. It may depend on what the agencies approve, because it looks like they have a lot of detailed information, you know, a driver's license number, fingerprint things, hair color, weight, height, date of birth, place of citizenship. And so I wasn't sure, you know, how much of that would be allowed to be used. And that's not my decision. That would be coordinating board or TEA.
Well, we don't, I mean, I don't think we have access to that information. And it was one of the extension requests that included the reference to the CCH data. So we didn't have it at the
later. Yeah.
Yeah, that was added later. We didn't have it at the beginning of the project because the project was focused on the cross-state study that was published in the Journal of Public Economics. And it took us a while to get the funding to do the other work. And now we have the funding, and we had added, you know, in the meantime, we were working on it basically without, you know, financial support other than what we get through our jobs to do the work up till now. And so we have just gotten the NSF funding in the summer. So I think it's, you know, that everything was in order and that we can use the 120 data if it's allowable for you. And I guess, you know, perhaps what we should do is consider getting an extension at this point rather than if a new project is going to entail a lot of work with the agencies. But maybe we could talk, you know, try to figure that out after the
Yeah, I
meeting.
think we'll have to talk through it.
Yeah, just a little bit more context to add to what Steve was saying. So Project 120 was reaching the 5-year mark. And we all know, I mean, we've had discussions here, you know, about how that's really the limit for a project's life. And that's why we suggested to Steve to submit a new proposal instead of requesting an extension. This is just a continuation of that project. So that was the rationale behind this new proposal. So, I mean, Steve's right, it is an extension essentially, but it's now looking like it's a new proposal now. And so, I mean, I'm happy to have a side conversation to work, you know, through this. But, you know, I know that, you know, Steve just received an NSF grant, you know, he's held accountable to certain deliverables. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, he and his team can make progress on this project.
That makes total sense. I think the only thing that perked our ears was referencing the data that was already linked, and on the agency's end, it does not exist anymore because we were required to destroy it. And so we can talk about whether, if the agreement allows, if it's the exact same data, possibly there's a way to what already exists in your ERC, Holly. Otherwise, you know, we'll just have to work through the agreements. It's supplemental data. And as we know how this works with supplemental data, there's often agreements between the supplemental data entity and the researcher, but also them and the agencies. So I think it's similar to the other ones in that way. We'll just have to look at our agreements to give the supplemental data.
Okay. I'm just, if
the agreement we had with them, I will say, I don't think it matters if it's an extension or not, because the agreement we had with DPS, like the agency did, it expired already. So even if there was an extension for the same project, our agency does not have that data anymore because we were required to destroy it by a certain date.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, could we approve the proposal and then have a separate conversation around how to merge in
Yeah,
the
I think that's
crime
totally
records.
appropriate. It's just, we wanted to make sure people or the
Yeah, no,
researchers
I understand.
it. On our end, we don't have that agreement anymore, but in our mind, I think it's the same as a supplemental request, and we would move forward with figuring out how that works and whether something could be pulled in under a prior agreement with the researcher. Great,
okay.
But the data as it existed before for that project at coordinating board does not exist anymore.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you for the, I know it's very confusing because I know the researchers, you have often agreements with the agencies and we totally understand that, but then most of the time, if it's student data, like coordinating board and TEA have to enter into separate agreements with these entities to share the data between us. So always willing to work through it as needed, but unfortunately this one is. Wait, any other questions or comments for the board or for the researcher on this one? We need the OC1 and OCS. We thought maybe you might want to request the OC1 and the OCS data as well.
Okay, thanks for that suggestion.
Anything else? Right, then do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add FERPA exemption language and add the OC1 and OCS?
I move to approve. This is Celeste.
I move to approve. I second. Holly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Proposal 8, including remote access request UTD 201.
All right.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. My name is Tekka Lenahan, and also on the call is my colleague, Sarah G. We're both first-year PhD students in the Ed Policy program at Harvard. And we're here today to discuss our proposed study titled The Causal Effects of Rapid Demographic Shifts on Student and Teacher Outcomes. So diving straight in, Texas public schools are increasingly becoming more diverse every year, with the share of white students nearly halved since 2000. So we know that schools serving more minority students have long been associated with lower achievement, more discipline issues, and higher teacher turnover. So this has sparked an interesting interest among researchers and policymakers as to whether shifting demographics impact educational outcomes. So our proposed study looks to answer this important question and hopefully provide the state with data-driven recommendations for improving learning and instruction in this new context. So just a little bit about how we're planning to do this. So 2005's Hurricane Katrina sparked an unexpected massive migration of disproportionately minority families, mostly to Houston, Texas. So we think that this event provides an excellent case study to compare student and teacher outcomes in Houston schools that hosted a large number of these evacuees pre and post disaster. For students, we hope to answer whether the shifts affected K through 12 academic achievement and behavior, as well as longer term outcomes such as college enrollment and workforce participation. So for teachers, we want to know whether more frequent interactions with Black students post-Katrina had any effect on turnover and/or effectiveness in improving student test scores. The results will benefit Texas in a number of ways. First and foremost, the main findings will speak directly to how contemporary demographic shifts may affect Texas students and teachers. For example, an educational policymaker in a shifting school could use our results to argue for salary or benefit increases to attract and retain high-quality teachers. Another possible benefit of this study is identifying best practices for educating during crises. In the process of answering our questions on demographic shifts, we'll also be able to identify which schools were more or less effective in accommodating displaced Katrina students. This information could similarly be used in a modern context to improve instruction if Texas is faced with another natural disaster. And with that, thank you for your attention and consideration.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have one comment. I think you mentioned using the displaced student flag from 2009.
Yes. So that's going to be one piece of it. And for before the flag, we have a proxy that we're planning to use to identify which students were likely came from due to Katrina.
You might have to rely on that because the 2009 flag is for a different hurricane. So yeah, for Hurricane Ike. So I know you made a PIR from the agency and you requested proportions of African-American students at campuses. Is that your proxy?
No. So the PIR, I was hoping to get just like, because previous research was able to like positively identify which students.
That's right.
Because basically there was funding dollars attached to the students, so schools kept really good records. The proxy instead is going to be a student who entered Texas public schools for the first time in 2005 and left. So at the time we thought the displaced flag would include Katrina students, but the research shows that most students left like by 2007, so maybe it's just within that window.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Right. No other comments. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add a FERPA exemption language?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
This is Holly. I second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Proposal 9, including remote access request UTD 202. Anyone here to talk to us about this one?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Sophia. I'm a PhD student in economics at the University of Chicago. And my project is going to be looking at the effect of the opioid epidemic on education. And so the opioid epidemic has been one of the most devastating public health crises in the US over the past 30 years. And its effects on things like health, substance abuse, and mortality rates are well documented. However, over the past several years, we've seen a rise in this literature that looks at second-order effects of the opioid epidemic on many aspects of societies and communities, which includes things like children's living arrangement, child maltreatment, and voting patterns, labor market participation, to name a few. So there's really the sense that kind of the extent of the effects extend beyond the immediate impacts on health. And so given these multifaceted effects, it's plausible to suggest that the epidemic may have affected educational outcomes for children who may have been exposed to opioids either directly through neonatal use or maybe even direct use by older children and young adults, or through indirect or exposed indirectly through use by a member of their family or wider community, which could have affected the stability and safety of their environment. However, the effect of the opioid epidemic on education outcomes has not been widely studied, and my proposed project would be, to my knowledge, the first to look at effects at the school level. And so the idea of the project at like a very high, very general level is essentially to look at school proximity to clinics and pharmacies which distribute high quantities of opioids, And then to look at compare outcomes between schools that are similar across a range of observable outcomes, but differ based on their proximity to these clinics and pharmacies, and look at how the opioid distribution affects children's educational outcomes. And I'm interested both in academic outcomes, so things like graduation rates, grades, standardized exam scores, and also behavioral outcomes such as attendance and disciplinary actions. And I think this research can benefit policymakers and education leaders in Texas in several ways. So first, just documenting the different impacts of the opioid epidemics in Texas directly. I think the results of the study can shed light on how exactly students are affected by the opioid epidemic and health crises more broadly in their communities, and identify specific issues which might be useful for providing guidelines for school counseling and just be useful as context for educators and mental health practitioners, for instance. Second, I think the results of the study can be informative for the effective allocation of communities that are for the effective allocation of counseling and mental health across schools in each district by showing which communities are most affected by the epidemic and how exactly they are affected. And finally, by understanding how exactly students are affected by the opioid epidemic and where exactly effects might manifest, our results can be informative to improve instructions by improving how students are served within the school and kind of raising awareness of those issues at a school level.
Excellent, thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers? All right. If there are no questions or comments, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add FERPA exception language?
This is Holly, I motion to approve.
This is Jackie, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank
you so much. Thank you.
All right, proposal 10, including remote access requests UTD 203. Anyone here to talk about this one?
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Luis Sobran with Texas 2036. I'm joined by my colleagues Carlos Navarro, Dr. Anjali Gupta, and Dr. Holly Hurd. We're grateful for the opportunity to present this proposal examining post-secondary education in Texas prisons. To kind of set the stage, in 2023, Texas had a monthly average of over 128,000 inmates incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, or TDCJ. And the vast majority of these inmates are going to be released back into society someday. For prison-based post-secondary education programs, the anti-recidivism and pro-employment outcomes are well attested in the scholarly literature, but a descriptive account of incarcerated students' history, educational experience, and other relevant outcomes are not. So what we want is a richer understanding of the background of inmates who take advantage of these programs, the kinds of courses they take, the degrees or credentials they receive, and any observable post-enrollment outcomes. Speaking briefly to the FERPA exemptions that were mentioned, the why for this kind of project is pretty simple. One is to inform instruction, namely the access and delivery of higher education in Texas prisons, and two, to improve the administration of financial aid for student inmates and funding for programs themselves. So moving into the project, we envision it as kind of being a three-part project determined by different study populations. Part one would be a trend and geographic analysis of incarcerated individuals who are also enrolled in Texas higher education between 2005 and the present, asking two main questions. One, how many individuals enroll in post-secondary education while incarcerated? And two, which higher education institutions are serving incarcerated students? Part two would be a longitudinal cohort analysis of higher education enrollment and incarceration, accounting for secondary educational attainment and achievement. The analytic population would include students in Texas public education in 8th grade from 2003 to 2019, who subsequently are found in the higher education data files as enrolled while incarcerated. And broadly speaking, we're asking here, what is the higher education and workforce experience of incarcerated individuals. And then lastly, part 3 is an analysis of financial aid and higher education funding opportunities and its potential impact on enrollment, potentially modeling some of the financing scenarios that I'll talk about in a little bit. But generally, we're asking, how do higher education funding opportunities affect the enrollment of incarcerated individuals in Texas? For a little more background and to talk about the ultimate benefit to Texas, unfortunately, currently there's really a general lack of basic information surrounding post-secondary education in Texas prisons. TDCJ itself doesn't maintain detailed, readily available information on enrollment, completion, or even the availability of post-secondary programs. And what makes this specific proposal even possible is the fact that higher education institutions are required by the coordinating board's CBM reporting manuals to indicate whether or not a student's incarcerated. And a few recent policy developments present systemic opportunities to improve access to post-secondary education in Texas prisons. So at the federal level, you may have heard about the recent expansion of Second Chance Pell Grants that aim to reduce financial barriers for more inmates than ever before. And in Texas, we have a few new state laws that will financially reward community college systems that educate students who are academically disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged, or adult learners, populations that are likely overrepresented in prisons. Collecting and sharing this information now has real high impact potential for Texas, particularly as the legislature prepares for a new session and a mandatory legislative sunset review of the Texas prison system in 2025. So given these developments, the well-documented benefits of these kinds of programs, and the basic landscape of post-secondary opportunities in Texas prisons, we believe it would benefit researchers, higher ed providers, and policymakers alike. Thank you again for the opportunity to share this proposal, and I think my colleagues and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I had a couple of notes.
Great.
I see you asked for employment status. I'm wondering how you're going to determine that. Is that just if someone had wages in the system or not?
I think so. And to my colleagues who are on the call, feel free to jump in and interrupt me at any point. But yes, the presence of wages in TWC data, I think, is their
Because
indication.
you can't see full-time or part-time. I wasn't sure if that's what you were referring to.
No, just basic employment.
I have a note too, but then I was looking over your proposal as you were speaking. I'm not sure if maybe I wrote down for the wrong one. That you wanted county of employment. Was that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. That is unfortunately a limitation of our wage data. The fields are in there, a residence county and an employment county, but that's not actually what they show. They're both the same data in both fields. And for the,
okay.
Employer, what we have could be just a headquarter address. So it could be a business that has multiple locations. So I would just warn you not to use the geographic data that's in those, the wage data files.
I see. Okay, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, your research question included continuing education students, is that right? Sorry, am I looking at the wrong one?
I'm not, I don't believe so. I have to double check.
I might be looking at the wrong proposal then. Sorry.
Was the A requested?
A and C were missing, so I was going to suggest to add that, but if you're not looking for the continuing education part, that's fine then.
No, I think we're just looking at higher education institutions.
Well, continuing ed is provided through the higher ed institutions. So I see. Making sure. Just because this is kind of a small population, I wondered if you could talk through your thoughts on how you would be able to present the data in a way that's FERPA compliant, even though it's a small population. The numbers were just about 2,000.
Yeah, and that's kind of a rough estimate that any given year it's about 2,000 students that are enrolled in higher ed programming. I think the basic answer is that we would be aggregating the data to meet masking requirements so that we at Texas 2036 wouldn't be seeing any individual level data.
But would it be, I'm just thinking like, is it still useful to be, even if data have to be combined across several years to produce output that's, useful for policymakers, like thinking through that kind of thing, or even combining across institutions, just.
Right. I think we would ideally like to specify institutions, but even if we can't, that's fine. I think one thing that I wanted to emphasize and stress is that when it comes to basic information for policymakers, we're starting at zero. I can say anecdotally, one of the main providers of post-secondary education in Texas prisons, it's a community college system called Lee College. They, as recently as last year in a public event, were complaining about the lack of data that they themselves have. And they are one of the better ones when it comes to self-reporting information. So even if it is aggregated, maybe really aggregated, still incredibly useful to policymakers to understand just what is happening in this space.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? There are none. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the FERPA exemption language?
I move to approve, Celeste.
I second, Jackie.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Proposal 11, including remote access request, UTA 234. Someone here to talk about this one. Hi.
Yes, we're here. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kevin Barlam with the University of Maryland-Baylor. I'm an assistant professor here, and sitting next to me is our Dean of Education, Dr. Craig Hammonds. We're kind of juggling between a job fair down the hall, a couple of doors, so we're not in our regular office environments. So I appreciate your patience on that. But basically, our project is looking at the relationship between high school campus ratings and post-secondary student success. So I've worked with accountability ratings probably all the way back to about 1999 in various schools, K-12 schools, either running models in our school with respect to benchmarks or predicting what ratings might be after we've actually taken the various tests that go into the rating calculation. So very familiar with the mathematical algorithms that go into those processes. However, I think where the research is lacking is how does that relationship or how does that rating actually correlate to any sort of post-secondary success? So for example, college graduates or graduation rates, GPAs with respect to students who graduate, and/or wages. So what we'd like to look at is with our current accountability system, the A to F system. So for example, students who graduate from a campus with say an A rating, do they actually have higher GPAs, higher graduation rates from colleges, higher wages, et cetera, versus say campuses who or students who graduated from say a C campus or an F campus, et cetera. So basically that is our project summary in a nutshell. I appreciate you. Appreciate the opportunity for to present this, and we'll take any questions if you have any.
Great. I appreciate the background. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers? There are none. Making sure I have the appropriate number of seconds of silence. If there are no questions or comments, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add FERPA exemption language?
This is Rayan. I move to approve.
This is Angie, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, proposal 12, including remote access request, UTA 235.
Hi, I'm Ben Backus from the American Institutes for Research. This one's mine, and we'll need the amendment on FERPA. This project focuses on disparities across racial groups in math achievement in the state of Texas. There's two components of this project. The first is monitoring differences over time. This is part of a 5-year grant, so we want to look both backwards and forwards, understanding how gaps in achievement between white students and students of color have changed over time, and whether there's any evidence that these gaps narrow going forward as there's more attention on these gaps. That's the first component of the project. The second is understanding various factors in the education system that shapes these gaps. For example, access to certified teachers, access to effective teachers as measured by their impacts on test scores, and other policies that we might want to investigate in the state. Thank you for reading through the proposal.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Before I talk through the motion, I want to say I really appreciate the clear formatting and detail in the data table. As the data people, we love that. And thank you.
I'll say thank you, Celeste, for her help.
All right, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the FERPA exemption language?
I move to approve. This is Rayon.
Second?
I'll second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, proposal 13, including remote access request UTA 236. Anyone here to talk to us about this one?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alberto Guzman Alvarez. I'm a research data scientist at the American Institutes for Research, and I'm joined on the call by my colleagues Liz Davis and Matthew McDevitt, also at AIR. So the motivation behind our study stems from the stark underrepresentation of students of color, women, and rural students in computer science courses in high school across the US. And the aim of our study is to evaluate the effectiveness of Code.org's equity and AP computer science principles, which in the proposal we refer to as Equity AP CSP. If folks aren't familiar with AP CSP, it's an AP course that was launched in 2017, developed in collaboration with the College Board at the National Science Foundation as a response to the growing crisis of under-enrollment and underproduction of degrees in computer science, particularly for women and historically marginalized students. So in partnership with Code.org, Code.org developed an equity in AP CSP program to increase the enrollment of underrepresented students in AP CSP. And this was done with two main components. The first one being the school leadership program, which encouraged school administrators and counselors to adopt and promote AP CSP at their school. And then a blended professional learning program, which supports AP CSP teachers in curriculum development and professional growth. So through both of these approaches, equity and AP CSP provides outreach and creates a school culture that is more likely receptive to students enrolling in the AP CSP course. So to conduct this analysis, we are requesting access to a variety of data elements in the Texas ERC. These include student level covariates as well as school level data, and the comprehensive data of the ERC will enable us to conduct an analysis of the program's impact on students' AP CSP enrollment using a propensity score matching approach, where the comparison schools are schools that offered the AP CSP course, but did not use Code.org's equity and AP CSP curriculum. Thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Right, there are none. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add FERPA exemption language?
This is Kathy.
I second, Holly.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Proposal 14, is that right? Okay. Proposal 14, including remote access requests UTA 237. Anyone here to talk to us about that?
Yes, hi there. Thank you. My name is Michael Steckety. I'm with Westat and joined by my colleague on the call, Heinrich Hock. Westat has been contracted by the U.S. Department of Education to conduct a study, a large-scale, longitudinal study to evaluate entrance and exit policies for English learners in 30 states, including Texas. The study will focus on whether students who are classified as English learners go on to experience different outcomes than similar students who are not classified as English learners, and also whether former English learners who have been reclassified out of English learner status experience different outcomes than similar students who remain in English learner status. We're going to utilize regression discontinuity design to compare kids who are, in the case of classified as English learners, just above or below the state threshold for various outcomes. And then in the case of reclassification, again, using regression discontinuity design to compare kids above and below the threshold for reclassification. We'll give particular attention to that time period around the passing of ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Acts under Title III, which required states to implement standardized procedures for English learner classification and examine a variety of outcomes that will be potentially impactful for Texas and multiple states across the country.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Right, if there are none, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add FERPA exemption language?
This is Holly. I motion to approve.
Second.
Angie, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Proposal 15, including remote access requests, UTA 238. Anyone here to talk to us about this project?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Hi, yes, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Happy to be here. I'm actually with my class right now, so they're also joining in to listen to this and also learn more about this work. So good afternoon. My name is North Cook, and I and my colleague Grace Mihan Kim at UT, we're focusing on basically the shortage of Asian American teachers. And we're interested in this for a couple of reasons. One is that the Asian American population has increased in the last 20 years, but we don't know how bad this shortage problem is for Asian American teachers because we hadn't looked at this longitudinally. The second issue is that we know that there was a rise in anti-Asian racism during COVID, during the pandemic, and it's unclear how that might have exacerbated the shortage issue for Asian American teachers. And so the project itself, we're looking at about 20 years of data to understand both trends, the rise in Asian American population and also the impact of COVID. And so we're looking at who goes into teaching among Asian Americans. So on the entry side, we're looking at within college, who selects into certification programs, who majors in education, where do they major in, what types of programs do they select into teaching within Texas. And then really on the exit side, we're concerned about retention, or we're concerned about turnover. And so we're interested in what factors sort of affects or predicts exit rates for Asian American teachers within Texas. And so for both analyses, we'll be using different forms of regression. For the descriptive side on entry, we're looking at logistic regressions to predict who goes into teaching among Asian Americans in terms of their academic backgrounds, in terms of where they choose to teach, what subject they choose to teach. On the exit side, we're interested in using discrete time survival analysis to model, what is the timing of exit for Asian American teachers? How does it differ by the types of schools that they teach at? How does it vary by the types of location, geographies that they're in? And really, we want to just understand, given that this is the fastest growing racial minority population in the US, why are there so few Asian American teachers currently in schools? And also, what are the ways that we can mitigate, improve these trends? And part of it is understanding what is the extent of this shortage issue at the really the micro level and also at the longitudinal level.
Great, appreciate that. The background on this project. Any questions or comments from the board for the researcher?
Yeah,
I just looked at your classes there. I'm sorry. Very cool.
No, I was just going to clarify again, like I did for another researcher earlier with the wage data. I think you had requested employment and residence county, and that can't really be used from the wage data.
Okay, that's helpful. It's my first time looking at this data, and I got a lot excited when I saw some of the wage trends because
Yeah, we're actually trying to clarify the language on the site. The employee county is actually just a copy of the employer county, and the employer address could come from a headquarter instead of each individual location. So that's why, unfortunately, that can't really be used.
Thank you. Well, that saved us a lot of time.
No, you're welcome.
Great. Any other questions or comments? There are none. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add language about the FERPA exemption?
This is Jackie. I motion to approve.
Great. Give a second. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I said it. Let's see.
CDP.
Okay. Now, wait, is there like a... Okay, we're moving on to item 7, consideration and possible action to approve request for remote access to data. Remote 1 UH2401 THCB, and we'll be approving the remote access request for this. This is a CDP with the coordinating board, where some researchers will be looking at too many papers in front of me. Looking at economic outcomes to higher ed and considering cost of education, including things like opportunity costs, tuition and fees, things like this. This plays into the coordinating board's kind of larger research agenda about credential of value and looking into what does that mean, what are different ways we could measure it. So that's the connection of this project to our larger research agenda. Happy to answer any other questions, but are any of this? Right, there are none. Do I have a motion to approve? One.
I motion to approve, and this is for remote access, correct?
Yes, correct.
Celeste.
Maybe second.
I second Holly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And next is adjournment. Appreciate your time today. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Okay.
No. Keep it going.
Don't go on the record, Holly.
I'm just joking. I hope jokes can make it on the record.
All right. Appreciate your time today, and we'll be in touch. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Bye.
Thank
everyone.
you.